Okay, welcome to another home edition of the Under the Broken Lamp. The other day, Mark Warners was saying to me in the halls, Larry, I just wish I could hang around you more and spend more time with you. And how did you get to be a guy that I want to hang around with so much? And I was thinking I could take credit for that, but it got me thinking about people that have formed me in my life. And boy, sitting under ministers has been just a wonderful thing. They present the word, and you think about it each week, and you may not think about it a lot, but it kind of grows on you. And so I thought it'd be good to interview some of my past ministers, and one of them is Jack Roeda. Jack, thank you so much for coming here today and going on Zoom with me. Um, and just to, good. Just to start off, a question. Um, this may not mean much to students, but there's an old theologian called Karl Barth who thought that we meet the gospel in some kind of dramatic event, and I think you hear that through preaching sometimes. And when I was sitting in your churches under your sermons, I always thought you would be Karl Barth's ideal preacher because you met Christ somehow in your sermons, and you couldn't always say how, but you met him. And one story I remember particularly, and I ask you to explain it, was you were sitting at the graveside at a funeral, and you had just buried a human body, and somebody from the family or something walked up to you and said, "Do you really think that body is going to rise again?" And just that question struck me. And then your answer struck me too. You said, "I wanted to say it's complicated, but yes." Can you remember you remember the event? I'd like to hear more about it. And then why complicated?
I do remember the event. And I think I may have said my simple and obvious answer is I do, but
Yeah.
it is more complicated. And then my thought of the complication was that, it's a restoration that will change things in ways that are altogether beyond our comprehension. I think the person that we bury today is in some mysterious way participating even now in the life of God. But the fullness of it and the richness of it and what this new creation and that I think is, it's just beyond telling. It's kind of like a fetus. If you could communicate to a fetus and tell her that there were all kinds of wonderful things out there for her, she could not begin to understand what it would be like to hike the Rockies or to fly down the road at 80 miles an hour listening to great music or what, I mean, there's no way. And I'm thinking this question about the resurrection and the like, it's complicated. We can, the scriptures talk about it sometimes in terms of golden streets and gates of pearly gates and all that, but that's all just a way of trying to take the best that we have and using it for its building blocks.
It seems like there's kind of two things wrapped up here. One is hope, and then the other is love, and then maybe a third thing about it being just beyond us. I was thinking when you talked about communicating to a fetus, you can talk to little kids, and if you tell little kids that someday they're going to like to kiss somebody, they might just think, oh, What?
Oh, yeah. I remember the first time I heard somebody describe French kissing.
Oh, yeah. Just
Oh my gosh, you gotta be
sick.
kidding.
And yet, somewhere along the way, they start to experience, or they learn to hope, and they
Yeah,
learn to
good
see
point.
fullness.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, but see, I think, and as you grow older, well, even as a child, um, you do have moments that, in some sense, prefigure uh, when we talk sometimes about a kid being in his element,
right.
right? Uh, Karl Barth talks about joy being those times where time stands still.
Yeah.
Life is fulfilled. It
Yeah.
is glorious. Um, so, so, um, so I think uh, we have foretastes of it. And I think the church at its best when it as a minister, for instance,
Yeah.
there were times where the sermon had gone well, I thought.
Reasonably well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they had gone well. And then there was this communion. And I remember at one point we were singing this quite a contemporary song.
Oh, the new Psalm winner contest one. I remember
Yeah,
this moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
Psalm 104.
Yeah.
And we were, the people kept coming and kept
Yeah.
coming to the front. And I just felt like if I were to die now.
Yeah. Let all creation sing for joy.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So we do experience those moments, and
yeah.
and I think it's so important to enter those situations where that kind of uh, depth, that kind of glory,
Yeah.
possible.
And
And I think as a church, we often fail miserably, but it ought to be everyone's goal to to see what the stakes are,
yeah.
and what we're destined to be, and so anyway. Um,
No, it's in a sense, I didn't think of this before, but my comment about your preaching and Karl Barth, this experience and this kind of hope at the graveside of something that started here, some small seed of this life is going to grow, and that's mixed with a mixture of hope and love. Um, that was so often captured. I tell my wife I want that song at my funeral.
yeah,
And I remember that exact moment.
yeah. Well, I was just reading another favorite writer of mine, Rowan Williams,
Yeah.
and he's talking about body grace, and he talks there about grace being uh, uh, desirable and being a source of joy.
Yeah.
So that you, in a good relationship, for instance, you experience that you are desired, that you are beloved,
Yeah.
and that you are a source of joy. Um, and the church must preach and experience and in some way manifest that kind of togetherness, that kind of community. And that's why it's awfully hard to feel that through Zoom.
Yes, that's true. Um, uh,
You know?
we get we're not in our element.
No, we're not. We're not
Uh,
somewhere else. That's exactly right. We're not. And there's one other thing when you were saying, talk a bit about the church and the like. One of the things, one of the memories I have about going to church.
yeah.
When I was a sophomore in the college, and I was not sure about whether I wanted to go into the ministry. I wasn't sure about God. I just wasn't sure. I go to church anyway. I go to church, And I'm a sophomore. This is back in '65, so this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And there's this family in front of me, and it was the L. Flanagan family.
Oh, yeah.
And at one point in the service, we rise to do the Apostles' Creed. And I rise, and Al Flanagan in front of me rises. And I see him mouthing the word, saying the words,
yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
And I thought, gee, if he can believe,
yes. Yeah.
Get with it, Roeda.
Yeah.
Sit down with some people and talk about it.
Yeah.
But being in one of the wonderful things, I used to sit. My office had a window that opened up to the parking lot and the driveway.
Yeah.
And about 10, 15 minutes before the service, the cars would come in. And I'd be watching them coming in.
Right. Yeah.
And I'd think, I wonder what kind of week they've had. And I almost sort of had this image of them coming from the battlefield, having experienced battles,
yeah.
and
yeah.
wounds, moments of despair, doubt, all these different things. And they're all coming back to kind of reassemble.
Yeah.
And to get their perspective straight.
That's, through meeting God in these moments of joy, that's what church has done for me. It realigns your perspective, and without it, you're easily lost. Easily, and it's not like a lost feeling, it's just disoriented.
It's flat and
a little like this Zoom life we're having right now.
yeah. So for me, like even though I missed not being the minister,
right?
There's something very, very I don't know, satisfying to be in sort of, this sounds terribly egotistical, but to be sort of in the center of this gathering.
Yeah.
And to enable people to experience the reality of the gospel, that this is true.
Yeah.
This is true. I had a friend once who loved this minister in Chicago, and I'd say, what do you love about him? And he'd talk about it. And it didn't make much sense to me, but he loved it so much. He said, I always wanted to leave the service singing "Onward, Christian Soldiers, Going on to War." I mean, we're out there. We're just
not a politically correct song, but the feeling.
No.
The feeling behind it is something wonderful. I got to wrap it up now, but thank you so much. Thank you for reorienting me as a retired minister. Thank you. I mean, I look over at my church and I see you, and then I see Al Planiga, and you guys just keep going and want to become oriented yourself, and that impresses me as a slightly younger person so much. And thank you for that.
You're quite welcome.